Good morning, you are watching A News. I'm Bakhtiar Sanov, and let's see the top stories. Donald Trump reiterates hope to secure peace in Ukraine as he confirms his readiness to apply secondary tariffs on Russian oil. Tensions between China and Taiwan escalate, sparking concerns over security in Asia. Death toll in Myanmar earthquake exceeds 2,000 as the critical 72-hour time frame for rescue operations ends. U.S. President Donald Trump said that he wants Russian President Vladimir Putin to make a deal to end the war in Ukraine. Speaking from the Oval Office, Trump expressed his desire to avoid imposing secondary tariffs on Russian oil buyers.
No, I want to see him make a deal so that we stop Russian soldiers and Ukrainian soldiers and other people from being killed. But mostly it's Russian and Ukrainian soldiers. They're losing at least 2,500 human beings, beautiful human beings, a week. And I wanted to stop. And some people would say, why do you worry about Russian soldiers or Ukrainian soldiers? I worry because it's like they're just like you people. They're like us. They're like all of us. And I seem to have an ability to do those things. And if I can do that, I think it's a very worthwhile thing to do. And I think we will. No, I want to make sure that he follows through, and I think he will. I don't want to go secondary tariffs on his oil, but I think, it's something I would do if I thought he wasn't doing the job. What happens is we made a deal for rare earth. It was all done. And I heard through you, I haven't spoken to them yet, but through you I heard that they're now saying, well, I'll only do that deal if we get into NATO or something to that effect. Well, that was never, number one, discussed. Number two, I think it's going to be very, long before Putin, they said you're not going into NATO. And it could be, that's probably the reason the war started, actually.
U.S. President Donald Trump has said that his forthcoming tariff announcement is going to be the biggest one yet. The White House has said that major imbalance in trade with countries around the world will be addressed by a new round of tariffs on all goods produced outside the United States. Ubi Schbander has more from Washington, D.C. in this report.
President Donald Trump has announced that he will officially unveil major new tariffs during a Rose Garden event at the White House on April 2nd. Calling it America's Liberation Day, White House officials said that any products made with foreign hands instead of Americans will face major tariffs designed to end what President Trump says are unfair trade practices. Trump had initially promised reciprocal tariffs on every nation that charges import tariffs on American goods. But recent statements by the president indicate that tariffs will be issued across the board on goods manufactured overseas. Those new tariffs, once they are rolled out later this week, will be issued on top of the existing tariffs that penalize major American trading partners like Mexico, Canada, and China for not taking sufficient measures to curb the smuggling of deadly chemicals used to produce fentanyl in the United States. White House trade advisor Peter Navarro recently said that he believes that Trump's new tariffs could rake in $600 billion a year into the American Treasury. And President Trump's economic advisors believe that in the long term, costs incurred by the tariffs will be paid by businesses operating overseas and by countries that have a major trade imbalance with the United States. The White House also believes that tariffs will force many manufacturers to reshore their production line inside the United States, which would in turn translate to more jobs here at home. And that has been a major policy priority for the Trump administration. The upcoming tariffs are expected to be the most comprehensive and wide-reaching to be issued to date. During a press briefing on Monday, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt criticized the European Union, India, Japan, and Canada for placing tariffs on American products, including American dairy and agricultural goods. Leavitt described such foreign tariffs as, quote, disdain for the American worker. And she said that it's time for a president to take historic change to do what's right for the American people, and that's going to take place on Wednesday. Major new tariffs expected later this week by the Trump White House. And that is expected to have a major impact on global markets. Ube Shabander, Washington, D.C. A News.
A shift is underway in global markets as Asian equities rally and gold hits a record high. All eyes turn to Washington, where President Trump is set to unveil a major tariff plan that could redefine international trade and deepen global economic uncertainty.
Asian markets bounced back following a rally on Wall Street, but investors are staying cautious with fresh uncertainty looming over President Donald Trump's upcoming tariff announcement. Japan's Nikkei rose by 0.7%, South Korea's Kospi jumped 1.4%, and Taiwan's stock benchmark climbed nearly 1.7% as markets tried to recover from a volatile March. Hong Kong's Hang Seng also gained 1%, while mainland China's blue chip index posted smaller gains up just 0.1%. Much of the focus is on April 2nd, a day Trump has named Liberation Day, when he's expected to reveal a large-scale reciprocal tariff plan. The move could reshape US trade policy and spark ripple effects around the world. In times of uncertainty, investors often turn to gold, and on Tuesday, the precious metal hit an all-time high, reaching over $3,139 an ounce for a fourth straight session. The dollar weakened against the Japanese yen as investors sought safety, but it gained slightly against currencies like the Canadian dollar and the Mexican peso. The Australian dollar slipped after disappointing retail sales data. Traders are now watching the Reserve Bank of Australia for any hints of a possible interest rate cut in the months ahead. Meanwhile, US Treasury yields declined as demand for safer assets increased, a sign that investors remain nervous about the global economic outlook. Oil prices also edged lower after a strong start. Brent crude fell to just under $74.70 a barrel, while US crude slipped to $71.37. The earlier jump in oil came after Trump threatened secondary tariffs on Russian and Iranian crude and warned Tehran of possible military action if it refuses a new nuclear deal. As markets await further details from Washington, the mood is cautious. Trump's Liberation Day announcement may signal a shift in global trade, with consequences still unclear for investors, economies, and consumers around the world.
Tensions are escalating in the Taiwan Strait as China launched large-scale military drills surrounding Taiwan. Beijing frames the exercises as a stern warning to separatist forces, while Taiwan strongly condemns what it perceives as a destabilizing move that threatens regional security.
China announced that its army, navy, air, and rocket forces are conducting joint military exercises around Taiwan. These drills focus on blockading key areas, securing maritime superiority, and targeting ground positions. The goal is to practice joint operations and force projection across the Taiwan Strait. This military move follows the US pledging to counter Beijing's aggression in the region. Tensions have also risen after Taiwan's administration leader called Beijing a foreign hostile force and introduced measures to counter Chinese espionage. Taiwan officials confirmed that 19 Chinese naval vessels, including the aircraft carrier Shandong, were detected near the island within a 24-hour period. In response, Taiwan deployed warplanes, ships, and missile systems to monitor and counter China's military activities. The Taiwan administration condemned China's actions, calling them an attempt to escalate tensions and destabilize the region. Taiwanese defense officials have also suggested that China should focus on addressing its internal issues rather than provoking military confrontations abroad. The situation in the Taiwan Strait has become a significant flashpoint in global geopolitics. Beijing calls these exercises a legitimate action to protect its sovereignty and unity. It also labels them a punishment for Taiwan's leader, Lai Ching-te, accusing him of pushing for independence and increasing tensions.
As the death toll from the massive quake that struck Myanmar has risen to at least 2,000, the United Nations and various aid organizations warn that the fallout of the disaster will exacerbate hunger and disease outbreaks in a country already torn by civil war. Neighboring Thailand's confirmed 19 people have died in the earthquake. Laura Westbrook reports from Bangkok.
The search and rescue operation is continuing here in Bangkok to try and find those trapped underneath that mountain of rubble. All that is left of a more than 30-story building that was under construction when it collapsed during Friday's earthquake. Now, we are now past the critical 72-hour window, but officials insist teams are not giving up and are working as fast as they can. They've been using excavators to shift the debris and concrete out of the way. International teams are also here, including the United States military personnel who are providing assistance for the families of the dozens of missing, including reportedly workers from Myanmar. It's an agonizing and exhausting wait. Meanwhile, the search and rescue operation on a much bigger scale is continuing in Myanmar, where the United Nations says the scale of the disaster is vast. Critical infrastructure like roads, bridges, and communication are damaged. Hospitals are reportedly overwhelmed, and thousands are sleeping in the open, afraid of aftershocks and unable to return to their homes, which are damaged. And further complicating efforts is the armed conflict that has been ongoing since the military junta seized power in a 2021 coup that ousted the democratically elected government. The UN is calling for unimpeded humanitarian access regardless of who is in control. But aid agencies in Myanmar say their teams on the ground still don't have a true picture of the devastation. While teams from China, India, and Russia have arrived and aid agencies are mobilizing, getting to the areas that needs that aid remains a challenge. Laura Westbrook for A News, Bangkok.
French far-right leader Marine Le Pen was found guilty of embezzlement of European funds. A court in Paris handed her a 4-year prison sentence and a 5-year ban from running for public office. Far-right leaders from across the globe were quick to show support to Le Pen, and her legal team said they will appeal the verdict.
Far-right leader Marine Le Pen has been convicted of embezzling European Union funds and sentenced to a 4-year prison term, with 2 years suspended, along with a 5-year ban from holding public office. This ruling significantly impacts her prospects for the 2027 French presidential election, where she was considered a leading candidate. The sentence stops her from running in the 2027 presidential race. Paris court president said Le Pen's actions were a serious and lasting attack on democratic rules. She left the courtroom before the full sentence was read. Currently a French MP, Le Pen was convicted alongside 8 MEPs and 12 assistants for misusing European Parliament funds to pay party staff in France. Prosecutors had sought a 5-year prison sentence, including 2 years suspended, a €300,000 fine and ineligibility to run for office, requesting the ban stand even if appealed. French Justice Minister Gérald Darmanin previously called the prospect of barring Le Pen from elections profoundly shocking. Polls had placed her as the leading contender to succeed Emmanuel Macron, who cannot seek a third term. Under her leadership, the National Rally has tried to distance itself from its extremist roots. The ruling has drawn support in social media from her European allies, with Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban posting "Je suis Marine" on X. Swedish journalist, political commentator Peter Sweden posted on X that, quote, "Marine Le Pen banned from being able to become the French president in 2027. She was the favourite to win. Is this what democracy looks like?" The leader of Spain's far-right Vox party, Santiago Abascal, gave his support to French far-right leader Marine Le Pen after her conviction by a French court, posting a message on AX saying they will not succeed in silencing the voice of the French people. The National Rally president Jordan Bardella called the verdict an attack on democracy, claiming Le Pen was unjustly condemned.
Germany issued an apology to Azerbaijan for its social media post depicting the flag of the former separatist regime, published on the German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier's social media account, which has caused serious discontent in Azerbaijan. The head of the German president's office reaffirmed support for Azerbaijan's territorial integrity, apologized for the incident caused by what was described as, quote, technical mistake and approved the public release of the apology letter. Armenia has taken another step in distancing itself from the Collective Security Treaty Organization. Yerevan confirmed that it will sign off on organization's 2024 budget, effectively withdrawing its financial support of the military alliance.
Armenia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs announced that it will not sign the CSTO's 2024 budget approval document. The country has informed the CSTO Secretariat of its decision to halt funding for the organization's operations. This move follows recent remarks by Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Alexander Pankin. He warned that if Armenia fails to meet its financial obligations by the end of 2025, CSTO member states may reconsider its role in the alliance. In early 2024, Armenia officially suspended its participation in the organization. Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan has repeatedly addressed Armenia's shifting stance. He stated that while the country has effectively withdrawn from CSTO operations, it still maintains a technical presence by not vetoing documents. In September, Prime Minister described the CSTO as a security threat to Armenia and declared that the point of no return in relations had already been passed. The Kremlin dismissed Pashinyan's claim, with spokesperson Dmitry Peskov insisting that the CSTO protects member states' sovereignty and poses no threat. Armenia's growing estrangement from Russia is also evident in its decision to freeze participation in CSTO military drills and reject invitations to summits. The rift between Armenia and Russia has deepened in recent months, particularly after the restoration of territorial integrity of Azerbaijan in September 2023.
Tajikistan, Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan have signed a historic agreement marking the junction point of the shared borders during a summit in Khujand. Our Fariza Kalimurzina has more on that.
A historic summit took place today in Khujand, where the leaders of Uzbekistan, Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan signed a groundbreaking agreement on their shared border junction. Along with this, they adopted a joint declaration committing to transform their borders into a zone of peace, stability and development. This deal follows 23 years of negotiations resolving long-standing disputes in the Fergana Valley. For Kyrgyzstan's President Japarov, this marks his first visit to Tajikistan since the border reopened in the middle of March. He and Tajik President Emomali Rahmon also signed agreements on water resources and infrastructure projects. In a significant move, the two presidents launched the Sogdatka power transmission line, which connects the energy grids. This $1.2 billion project, part of a broader effort to export electricity to Afghanistan and Pakistan, marks a major step in regional cooperation. Mirziyoyev's participation in the trilateral summit provided additional regional momentum for discussions on economic cooperation and the strengthening of good neighborly relations in Central Asia. Border tensions between Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan, which date back to the Soviet era, have led to over 230 incidents, with the most intense fighting occurring between 2019 and 2020, resulting in heavy losses of both sides. A root cause of these conflicts has been the unclear status of 70 sections along the 984-kilometer border. However, since 2022, both sides have been working to resolve the issue. Today's agreement marks the final step in putting an end to these disputes. The media has described this agreement as a triumph of diplomacy. It includes the exchange of territories and the reopening of several land checkpoints along the border, which had been closed. Experts see this agreement as a shift of conflict to cooperation, enhancing regional security and holding broader significance for Central Asia and the global community. Fariza Kalimurzina, A News, in Almaty, Kazakhstan.
As the United States prepares to implement new trade measures, concerns are mounting over their potential global impact. President Donald Trump is set to announce reciprocal tariffs on April the 2nd, a date the administration is calling Liberation Day. Among the industries at risk is Turkey's automotive sector, which may face significant disruptions due to a proposed 25% tariff on car imports. The United States is an important market for Turkey's automotive industry, but trade tensions are threatening to upend that relationship. According to the Turkish Exporters Assembly, the United States was Turkey's 9th largest automotive export market in 2024, with the sector achieving record high exports of $37.2 billion globally. However, in the first 2 months of 2025, the United States fell to 10th place. Despite fluctuations, Turkey's auto exports to the United States have averaged $1.1 billion annually over the past 6 years. In 2024, total exports reached $1.2 billion, up from $1 billion in 2023. The trend continued in early 2025, with exports for January and February reaching $198 million, marking a 4% increase from the same period in 2023. With a proposed 25% tariff on imported vehicles, Turkey's automotive industry could face new challenges. Analysts warn that such measures may drive up costs, disrupt supply chains, and lead to a decline in Turkish car sales in the U.S. market. The Turkish government and industry representatives are closely monitoring developments, hoping for negotiations that could ease the impact of these tariffs. China's manufacturing activity has shown growth for the second consecutive month. Official data released on March 31st indicates that the world's second largest economy is making efforts to recover from a prolonged slump.
China's manufacturing activity grew in March for the second month in a row, according to official data from the National Bureau of Statistics. The Purchasing Managers' Index stood at 50.5, surpassing the 50-point threshold that separates expansion from contraction. This marks an improvement from February's 50.2 and is the highest reading in the past 12 months. The rise in manufacturing activity was driven by workers returning to their jobs after the traditional Spring Festival in February, and an acceleration in enterprises' production and operations, as explained by NBS statistician Zhao Qinghe. Meanwhile, the non-manufacturing PMI, which measures activity in the services sector, also showed growth, registering at 50.8 in March, up from February's 50.4. China has been grappling with multiple economic challenges, including rising youth unemployment, weak consumer demand, and a prolonged property sector crisis. Adding to these pressures are fresh trade tensions with the United States, where higher tariffs on Chinese exports are expected to impact domestic manufacturers in the coming months. In response, Chinese authorities have implemented a series of stimulus measures, such as interest rate cuts and easing some home purchasing restrictions. Additionally, during a key political meeting this month, leaders announced plans to create 12 million new urban jobs in 2025. They also reaffirmed their target of 5% economic growth for the year, a goal many economists view as ambitious.
That's all we have for now. Stay tuned for more updates. Thank you for joining us.